So let's begin here by considering a framework that can explain and characterize all the different processes and actions that need to take place if information is going to be sold. You have some content that you've already produced, and you have a consumers that you want to reach with that content. The consumers have to find it, so they have to engage in some forms of search activities. Now, you can imagine that you can assist in those activities by various means, including advertising and forms of publishing, but ultimately the consumers have to search and find your content amongst all the content there is out there. At the same time, you then have to give consumers, you have to disclose what it is you've got to sell. As we will discuss in a later lecture, this disclosure is actually quite a difficult and quite challenging problem that many content producers face. You sometimes see examples of this by, say, getting a preview of a movie or a snippet of a song on iTunes or a little bit of a précis of what sort of thing you might be able to read. And the reason it has to be sort of like that is because, of course, if you tell consumers, you disclose to them everything, how are you going to complete a transaction? How are you going to get them to pay for it? The second part is once you've got a match, once the consumers have found your content and you've disclosed enough that they're sort of interested, then you have to do something more straightforward economically. You want to distribute the content to the consumers and have them pay for that have them pay to receive it. We call this part the inner transaction. This is the way we look at most economic transactions, consumers and their suppliers, and we think about goods and services being distributed to them and consumers paying for it. And a lot of economics is about that. But of course, the outer transaction, as I'm going to call it, where consumers actually find the content and you give them enough information that they can see that they've been successful in finding the content they want, we're going to call that the outer transaction, and that plays an entire role, somewhat distinct, but of course interacting with the inner transaction. So how are we going to examine this in the lectures that follow? Well, in this online lecture, we're going to look at the inner transaction. Next week, we'll look at search, and later on, we'll think about disclosure.